One night, I was having trouble sleeping. This isn't uncommon on a full moon, and I was waiting for it to slip out of vision. I could see it outside my window, and I had watched it rise up out of the forest that surrounds my home. It was 12:30 at the time, and I decided to get out of bed and watch the moon from my window. The room was filled with the sound of deep breathing, that my girlfriend Tammy, who was sleeping soundly. I envied her. The moon was large and slightly gold in colour. I rubbed my eyes and sighed. When I looked out the window, I saw a faint light in the distance. At first I thought it was headlights, maybe one of our neighbours coming home. As I observed it more closely, it seemed to be stumbling and moving towards our property very, very slowly. I was becoming very uneasy, but I proceeded to watch it around another 5 minutes. As it grew nearer, I could make out the figure a little better. At that point, I wish I hadn't. It seemed to be an infant, a toddler wearing a tattered dress from what I could see. There was something weird about its motion though. It swayed violently side to side, placing its leg out in front of it as it did so. I decided to wake up Tammy because it's just too strange. "Hey," I whispered. What's wrong, Chris?" Tammy said, completely in a haze of half-sleep confusion, as she rubbed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "You have to see this." I stared out the window for a moment longer, and I saw it reappear behind a tree. It was making its way left from the road it had been walking down directly onto our fenced property for about 4 acres altogether. It was still quite a distance from my house though. What the hell is it? What do you think it wants?" The fear was evident in my girlfriend's voice. I don't know." The toddler had stopped and turned its head towards our window. I quickly dropped to the ground and pulled Tammy down with me, hoping it didn't see us. I then waited a few moments before I had to look to see what it was doing. It was now walking right in our direction. It was then I realized what it was, though it had seemed impossible. A doll. "It's coming," I whispered fleetly, fear tinging at the syllables as they slipped out. "Why? What do you think it's going to do?" "I don't know. I really don't. I've never liked dolls." The room was then filled with the sound of my heartbeat. It was pounding against my chest, trapped by my ribcage. It echoed through my head, and I desperately wanted it to stop, because if that thing could hear it, then it would find us for sure. Neither of us dared to move at that point. We listened for what seemed like hours, but eventually Tammy fell asleep in my arms while I stayed and listened long after. The only sound that reached my ears was slow taps, tapping, possibly on the window, but I couldn't bring myself to look up and find out for sure. I don't know how, but I managed to fall asleep. I know that because I woke up and the sun was shining brightly in my eyes. The sky was filled with large, scattered clouds, one of which soon covered the sun. It was blocking its warm rays. It was early in the afternoon, but it seemed even sinister. Tammy was still lying next to me on the floor. I got up and carried it to the bed, and then tiptoed out of the room looking for anything that brought sense of clarity to what had happened the previous night. I inspected the hall. Nothing. The bathroom. Nothing. Then the living room. I sighed with relief, but then I saw it. Bloodied handprints were splattered on the full-length windows. A series of little handprints, all made by the left hand. It was all real. It had happened. Maybe I needed to research the history of the place. I knew that an old lady had owned this house before. She had passed away a few years ago, and the house was out of sale. I knew there was an old box of books of hers in the basement. I never really went through them because I didn't really think it was right, but then, in that moment, I needed to know what the hell was going on. "Morning. Are you okay?" Tammy's voice resonated from behind me. "I guess." I smiled, trying to reassure her that everything was going to be fine, although I don't think it was very convincing. "Find anything?" I nodded and pointed to the handprints on the wall. "Whoa, this is really messed up. We have to find out what's happening. I'm not waiting for it to come back. Let's go through the old lady's books, maybe we'll find something." I was glad Tammy had drawn to the same conclusion I had, so I proceeded to the basement. It was an old box in the dusty corner, covered by a dirty old sheet. There were some decrepit books, possibly diaries of old photographs. Tammy picked up the book, discovering that it was a letter, started flipping through them. I picked up another strange book. It was not a diary. Instead, it seemed to contain incantations and things of the occult. It was definitely associated with some form of dark magic. My eyes widened as the puzzle pieces clicked in my mind. "Holy shit, I think I found it," I mumbled quietly yet excitedly, half trapped in a maze of thought. "Let me see, I think I found something too." As I handed her the book, I found she reached me an old musty photograph of a little girl with long braided hair. She had dark eyes and was possibly around 8 or 9 years old. The oddest thing about this photo was that she seemed to resemble the little doll she was holding. It seemed to be an exact replica of the doll. We were on a good start, but needed more information. I flipped through the pages of the strange book and found a page marked with a line of dark crimson blood traced down the right side of the page. Written on the page was an incantation to transfer your soul to an inanimate representation of yourself that it may grow old instead of you. This little girl didn't know what she was messing with. Where would she even find this? I asked, astonished. I don't know, maybe someone gave it to her? She wouldn't have known it existed, Tammy suggested. There were two other little dark books in the box, one titled Mary and the other titled Annie. One name rang a bell. I knew Annie was the name of the lady who used to live here at the house. I started reading Mary's diary and Tammy read Annie's. They're sisters, I said. We continued to flip through the tired yellow pages. Yeah, Annie seems to be very worried about Mary in this diary. She says she's been acting peculiar, Tammy remarked. What's the date of it? I asked. 6th of June, 1958. I flicked to that page in Annie's book. I'm so frustrated with Mama and Papa, I read. They never listen to me, and I'm old enough to know what's best for me. I am old enough. I don't need their permission to leave the house. If I want to go, I should be able to just go. This is not a prison. Clearly, Annie was dealing with some childhood angst. Nothing too strange there. I looked through the pages before that, and she mentioned something about the ritual, and that it had been completed, and that Mary would soon remain beautiful forever. As I read on, I saw that it read, but if her body loses its life, her soul will resurrect in the inanimate representation 50 years after her death, so that it may return to her body. Mary died a week later. Apparently she drowned, I said, flipping through the pages. Oh, I said fearfully, letting that all sink in. Tammy reached for the diary to read the entries in her own eyes. So, the doll is Mary, and then it's returning to the body? Tammy theorized. So, wait, she must be buried here somewhere. Then what happens after she finds the body? I said as I quickly skimmed through the lines on a marked page. I found the instructions to Driscoll and read them out loud. The resurrection charm is to be placed on the body's chest. Draw blood from a living person unwillingly. Let it spill onto paper or wood, engraved with the name, age, and death date of the body. It then must be burnt, and the ashes sprinkled in a circle around the corpse. I drew in a breath. Once this has been done, a nail must be driven into the heart of the representation to allow the soul to escape. The soul is then free to return to the body, but if it gets lost or does not wish to return to the body, then is doomed to wander the earth forever. Is that the only way a soul can be reconnected to a body once more? Tammy inquired, clearly shaking from the news she'd learned. There is another way, I mentioned, but it's very risky. If you choose to resurrect the body before the soul is back inside it, this option is recommended if you have performed the soul exchange on your body and your body has died. The living corpse will most likely destroy you. If it does, the body will also destroy itself. To do this, instead of driving a nail through the heart of the representation, you must offer a part of yourself and nail it to a tree with the resurrection charm carved symbol in it. The body will rise and may either take the nail and drive it through the representation, destroy the representation, or run away and kill everyone inside. I read all we need to know. I stood up, went to the stairs, out into the dark, damp basement. Tammy followed behind me. I wonder if it has blood, remarked. Chris, your arm, Tammy cried out in complete shock. Chris, your arm, Tammy cried out in complete shock. I inspected both my arms, but I couldn't see anything. Then I saw a small blood stains on my shirt. I lifted up my sleeve and to find a rather small but deep cut near my shoulder. That wasn't there last night. She was here. She washed her sleep and we have to kill it. And it went gone, Tammy explained, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She was clearly close to panic, and I wasn't too far behind her. But the more I freaked out I became, the more determined I became to kill this thing, to get out of here. I proceeded into the living room and went down to the front door. I found it to be unlocked. This was how it got in. It was not a human, and I didn't want to think of it as having any human qualities. It was a demon, a monster, a plastic doll, nothing more. I went outside and peered into the woods, taking in every detail. A chilling breeze rushed through the trees and brought it with the smell of burning. It's almost finished. We have to stop it. I ran into the forest against the wind, its cold biting at my face. I turned around to see where Tammy was. She was running behind me with a knife in hand. I brought this, just in case, she said, out of breath from the sun. Good. We waited for a while, crouched in the thick forest, listening. An unearthly shriek filled the air and was followed by the sounds of growling. Like a deranged animal making minced meat of its prey, I grabbed Tammy's hand and we were paced slowly towards the sound of the noise. We got closer and the sound became more distinct. I stepped on a stick and broke it under my foot. I winced. Everything went silent. The noises hushed, but then we heard rustling behind us. A chill pricked up my spine. My head whipped around, but I couldn't see anything. There it was again, the rustling, only this time to the side of us. It was obviously moving very fast, whatever it was. Tammy raised her knife, ready to defend if we have to. We moved closer to each other, seeking comfort while feeling completely surrounded. All of a sudden, she was ripped from my side. Tammy screamed and the knife flew out of her hands. I turned to see the creature with long, dark hair and abnormally large eyes ripping into my love. It was extremely pale, grey skin and thin, bony arms and legs. Around its lips were blue, a feature of suffocation or drowning. It clawed at Tammy's stomach as she flailed and then struggled against its unusual power. I quickly grabbed the knife's handle and drove it into the back of the creature. It had no effect. I winced and pulled with all my might and eventually lugged the creature off Tammy, who was now covered in blood, injured badly. The corpse of Mary let out an ear-piercing shriek and it clawed viciously at my arms with her bony, decomposed fingers. I pulled out my knife and attempted to decapitate the creature, sawing into its cold, clammy neck. Its claws sunk deep into my flesh, causing blood to flow in streams of bright red down my arm. I finally regained enough strength to drive the knife all the way into its neck and sever its head. Mary's head dropped to the ground with a thud. The body stopped struggling and went limp, twitching slightly in an erratic motion. I released it and watched it fall. I rushed over to Tammy, who was growing more and more pale with the seeming of near to be unconscious. Blood covered her torso and it was seeping it from her deep wounds. She had lost a lot of blood. It's over. It's done. We did it. It's not coming back, I restored her gently. She nodded weakly as I expected her injuries. There were deep scratches on her arms, face, and even more worse on her stomach. She was lucky to not be disemboweled. I looked back over the body of Mary and saw it was gone, vanished. I looked back at Tammy. She was gone too.